What's up, everyone? I just wanted to record a quick intro for this video just to give some context to it. This is a segment that I recorded that was going to be part of this week's Everything Guitar episode 5, but that video was going to run a little bit long, and if I included this, it would have been about almost a 40-minute long video. I thought that was a little bit excessive, so I decided to chop this section out and put it just up as a separate video to put up on Saturday morning for this week. So this is, you should be seeing this if you're seeing it the day it came out on Saturday, July the 18th. To give you a little context, we talk in the video about mental rehearsal and mental practicing, and I'm going to put a link in the description below to the study that I was reading, or the blog post I was reading that referenced the study about the piano students and mental rehearsal. So that post, that was from a blog post from Dr. Joe Dispenza. If you don't know who he is, I would highly recommend looking him up. He is an incredibly brilliant mind when it comes to mental focus, when it comes to changing your reality based on changing your mind. But anyway, I'll put the link down in the description of the video if you want to read more on that blog post and on that study. And I hope you all enjoy the video. So here you go. Okay, this week on Everything Guitar, I wanted to dive in for the first time into something that I was talking about previously. I kind of hinted on a couple of previous episodes, which is mental practicing and mental training for the guitar as well. Obviously, if you're new to guitar or if you play guitar for quite a while, you know that the old saying that practice makes perfect. While perfect might not be the right word, practice makes better. Practice makes improvement. And yes, of course, we spend a lot of time practicing our scales, practicing our chords, changing chords. But one thing that a lot of people, that I don't hear a lot of people talking about in the music world, or at least in the guitar world that I follow, is not a lot of people talk about mental practice and mental rehearsal. So I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about that today, because that can be an invaluable part of your development as a guitar player. What do I mean when I mean mental rehearsal? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. If you're rehearsing, you are practicing a part, you are playing it over and over again. Yes, you're playing that in your head. Maybe you're just starting out, you're trying to get between switching chords between a G and a D chord, let's say G, D, then C, then back to G. So you'll spend a lot of time doing things like this. G, then switching to D. When you first start out, you're probably doing a lot of what I was just doing there, watching your hands. So I was doing that intentionally. Watching the finger shapes change. So you get that muscle memory of making those changes. So, in addition to that, one thing that you can do that a lot of people don't take time to do or don't put enough time into is mentally rehearsing that. What does that mean, Ben? You ask. What do you mean by mental rehearsal? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. If we're playing those chords and we're practicing going from C to D, G to D to C and back to G, we see what our hands are doing, yes? We see ourselves strumming. We see our fingering changing on our left hand. We see ourselves strumming the next chord. We see ourselves strumming the G again. You don't have to have this in your hands to do that. There is what's called mental rehearsal, meaning that you can close your eyes and you can visualize yourself doing that. You can even practice making those changes. See yourself with your eyes closed, forming the G chord, your fingers where they need to be, strumming that G chord. Then see yourself switching to a D chord, strumming that D chord. See yourself switching then to a C chord, strumming that C chord. This may seem a little bit strange to some of you, may seem a little bit kooky or a little bit, okay, sure, Ben, you can mentally rehearse things. Yeah. But believe it or not, scientific research proves the fact that this does work. This will make you a better player. I have something pulled up on the screen here that I'm just going to read a little bit of it to you here. Now, this was piano playing, not guitar playing, but I think we would all agree that they're kind of interchangeable in the extent that we're learning to play an instrument, right? So there's some correlation there. So let me read you a little bit about this study. In 1995, the Journal of Neurophysiology, and in the Journal of Neurophysiology, an article was published demonstrating the effects that mental rehearsal alone being the key word, had on developing neural networks in the brain Neural networks are individual clusters of neurons or nerve cells that work together and independently in a functioning brain. So think of your neural network as the wiring in your brain, the connections that make this memory trigger this emotion, which makes you feel this way, which makes you do this thing. You know what nerves are probably. If you've had any type of biology class, you've heard the term, you've probably learned about nerves. So neural networks are the connections of those networks and those nerves and those pathways in your brain. So let's continue on with what it says here on the study. Let's see. Neural nets, as we will affectionately call them, are the latest model in neuroscience to explain how we learn and how we remember. They can also be used to explain how the brain changes with each new experience, how different types of memories are formed, how skills develop, how conscious and unconscious actions and behaviors are demonstrated, and even how all forms of sensory information are processed. So, getting a little sciencey there, but stick with me. This is some very cool stuff to hear because it will reinforce the fact that this does work. Let's see. Neural networks are the current understanding in neuroscience that explains how we change on a cellular level. In this particular research, 4 groups of individuals, getting back to the study from 1995, 4 groups of individuals were asked to participate in a 5-day study that involved practicing the piano in order to measure the changes that might take place in the brain. The first group of volunteers learned and memorized a specific one-handed 5-finger sequence that they physically practiced every day for 2 hours during that 5-day period. So if you were in group 1, let's say you were learning to play on guitar, we'll translate it, you're learning to play the A minor scale that we covered a little bit ago on the creating the A minor triad for a chord. So you sat for 2 hours a day and you did this. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. Now, for those of us that have been playing for a while in practice, we're familiar with doing those type of activities. So 2 hours a day, that's what they did for a 5-day period. The second group of individuals in this study were asked to play the piano without any instruction or knowledge of any specific sequence. So that's just that'd be equivalent of someone just saying, play guitar for 2 hours. Didn't tell you to play something specific, just play guitar for 2 hours for the next 5 days. The third group of people never even touched the piano. So this guy, the guitar, went away, was thrown out the window, not literally, or the piano, but they didn't touch the piano, but they were given the opportunity to observe what was taught to the first group until they knew it by memory in their mind. So while group 1 was being shown, this is how you play an A minor scale, group 3 was watching someone tell group 1, this is how you play an A minor scale. And they watched that over and over again until they remembered how to do that, how to play there, 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 there. So that's what group 3 did. They watched that. Then they mentally rehearsed their exercises by imagining themselves in the experience for the same length of time per day as participants in the first group. So after being taught that and just watching but not actually playing it, for the next 5 days, for 2 hours a day, people in group 3 mentally imagined themselves playing that pattern. So they saw themselves playing the piano in this case, playing this 5-note pattern over and over again. They spent 2 hours a day mentally rehearsing that without ever touching a piano. With me so far? All right, the fourth group was the control group. They did nothing at all. They never learned or practiced anything in this particular experiment. They never even showed up. So there was a control group that had no training whatsoever, which is very important to have a control group in any type of scientific study or experiment. So let's see what happened. At the end of the 5-day study, the experimenters used a technique called transcranial magnetic stimulation, along with a few other sophisticated gadgets, in order to measure any changes that took place in the brain. To their surprise, the group that only rehearsed mentally showed almost the same changes involving expansion and development of neural networks in the same specific area of their brain as the participants who physically practiced the sequences on the piano. The second group, who learned no piano sequences at all, showed very little change in their brains since they did not play the same series of exercises over and over each day. The randomness of their activity never stimulated the same neural circuits on a repetitive basis and thus did not strengthen any additional nerve cell connections. The control group, the ones who never showed up, evidenced no change at all, as you'd expect. So, let's reiterate that again. The group who mentally showed the group who mentally rehearsed, is all they did, never touched the piano, showed almost the same changes involving expansion and development of neural networks in the same specific area of their brains as the participants who physically practiced the sequence on the piano. So someone sitting there and mentally seeing themselves playing this 5-key sequence, or in our case, mentally rehearse playing the A minor scale over and over again for 2 hours a day, showed almost the same change in development in their brain after a 5-day trial as someone who physically sat there and played that 5-key sequence on the piano, or in our case, physically practiced the A minor scale for 5 days for 2 hours a day. Pretty cool stuff. So what does that tell you? Why am I bringing this up? Realistically, we're not always in a place where we can have a guitar in our hand and be practicing. There are some of us that are musicians full-time that have a lot more latitude to do that, but you may very well have a day job. You may be a student who's in school currently. You maybe have to take classes, well, maybe not in school currently with Corona going on, but a student who's in school, you may have family commitments. You can have a number of things that prevent you from being able to sit down and practice this instrument. That doesn't mean, however, that you cannot mentally rehearse and mentally practice this instrument. So I would greatly encourage all of you out there to give this a try. Don't expect it to be a light switch where if you sit there and you imagine yourself sweep picking 30-second note arpeggios like Yngwie Malmsteen for 2 hours a day for the next 5 days, that you're magically going to be able to sweep pick 30-second note arpeggios like Yngwie. It probably won't be that drastic of an improvement. However, scientific research, as we just saw, has proven that those connections will start building. So the next step you take it with that then is, if you mentally rehearse that, if you add the component of mental rehearsal to your physical rehearsal and physical practicing, according to theory, and from my experience from experimenting with this in my own life, you will see improvements quicker. Your brain, this big mass up in your head here, this jelly, gray looking, funky looking thing that we've all probably seen in some movie or something, in a jar maybe in some mad scientist office, it controls every other part of your being. It controls the ability for your fingers to do this, or your fingers to do this, or to have jazz hands, or whatever the case may be. So it only stands to reason that not only doing this move will make you better at playing your A minor scale, just as a very basic example. But if you practice that in your head and your brain sees itself over and over again doing that, you practice seeing your fingers play 5th fret, 7th fret, 8th fret, next string, 5th fret, 7th fret, 8th fret, next string, 5th fret, 7th fret, go back down, 5th fret, 8th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret, 6th string, 8th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret. It stands to reason that if you mentally practice that, your brain's going to start drawing those connections. It's going to start wiring those neurons together. So when you consciously say play an A minor scale, you think that to yourself, there's already a pathway there. Think of it as a road map, folks. If you're wanting to get somewhere, it helps to have some kind of map or something to know where you're going. If you're in Southern California and you're wanting to drive to Seattle for a vacation for a week, it probably helps to know how to get there, or at least have road signs. Imagine you lived in Southern California, you live in Los Angeles, and someone said, hey, why don't you come up and visit me in Seattle for a week? But there were no road signs. You'd never seen a map. You'd never had GPS or anything like that. You might eventually find Seattle, but it's probably got to be a really slow, painful, convoluted process. But if you have a map or a GPS, i.e. if you start building these connections in your brain by mental rehearsal, you will get there a lot more efficiently and a lot quicker. So trust me, include this component of mental rehearsal and mental practice in your practice routine and or in your daily routine of life, and I promise you, you will advance quicker on your instrument.